Such, it made perfect sense to ask Erik to come up and lead this one. So, Erik, please introduce your panel and take it away.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, so yeah, this is a good panel, smart folks, and we've all had our coffee, so hopefully there won't be any Rick Perry moments late in the afternoon here. To my left is Amir Ashkenazi, CEO and co-founder of Adapt TV. To his left, Andrew Budkowski, EVP for Sales and Partnerships with Break Media. And anyone, if I get this wrong, please just stop me. To his left, Young Jin, Senior Director of Business Development for TubeMogul. And to his left, Greg Pomero, SVP, Client Business Partners for Universal McCann. And at the end there, last but not least, Matt Wasserlauf, EVP, Video Platform and Services for Specific Media. And actually, I'll just give them each a quick, no more than 30 seconds, maybe even 15 seconds to just say what your businesses do real quick before we jump into this, just so everyone knows where you're coming from.
Okay, we're Adapt TV. We are the platform that connects buyers and sellers in the video advertising space. So if you're an advertiser, ad agency, trading desk, DSP, ad network, and you reach publishers and need a platform to power your business, come to Adapt TV. If you're a publisher and you need a platform to run your business and also get access to over 1,200 campaigns that are running in our marketplace monthly, that will be a great place for you.
Break Media, we produce, promote, and syndicate content in the video space. We own 9 websites. We run the 4th largest video ad network, and we have an in-house production crew called the Creative Lab. So whether it's from whiteboard to distribution methodologies, we can help in the video space.
TubeMogul, we're a DSP for video. We take video of all forms, the power of sight, sound, and motion. We get it to your target audience, and we do it with accountability and measurability.
Universal McCann, we're a full-service media agency. We pride ourselves on buying business outcomes for our clients rather than just buying impressions or exposure.
And Specific Media, having acquired my company, BBE, today we're the largest video network, according to ComScore, and most recently the acquirer of MySpace. So we're now in the owned and operated media business.
Awesome. All right, I will jump right into it. Basically, I guess one thing that we're welcome to do on this panel, as in others, is challenge the premise of the panel, as long as it's not too destructive. And I guess the premise of this one is that there is a scarcity in premium ad inventory. I don't know if anyone here would take exception to that. Presuming that there is, what are the impacts of that scarcity on inventory, like on pricing versus on, for example, exchanges versus networks? Is there a different dynamic in what determines pricing? Anyone?
Well, there's a finite number of impressions in the video space that's out there. I heard 1% of the internet is video based, so that means that there is only a certain amount of inventory available, and that means that pricing is going to be an issue for premium inventory versus exchanges. Right now, it's seemingly a race to the bottom in the CPM world, which is going to be a big issue coming in the next 12 months. I mean, just these guys on the panel across the companies can speak to it, but it's an issue for sure because CPMs need to be a certain level just because of the commoditization of it. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about it, but from a publisher side, that's what we're seeing.
I think in general you see higher prices, you see a lot more volatility. At the same time, you see a lot more opportunity. I think when you look at exchanges versus networks, you see things happening much faster and quicker in terms of time, real-time bidding, whereas with the cycles with networks where they have more established relationships, you can see these movements taking a little bit longer to transfer in terms of the pricing effects.
Like Andrew, I come from the TV business in my prior life, and the content owners and the major media companies were never going to cooperate with the digital media interests. Hulu is probably the exception to that rule, and we're seeing the success that Hulu's having. But content is hard to come by. There's some powerful stakeholders who we're wrestling with to gain access to that content. But I think the great opportunity for us here in this room is really informing the next generation of content, starting to create new great premium content and pricing that in the marketplace. So there's certainly challenges, and the amount of content, premium content, is finite, is limited, and it's getting priced accordingly. But there's a huge opportunity for these companies in the room.
Just I think we need to be clear about the type of video. So, many companies combine and confuse in-banner and in-stream. In-banner is just a display unit with a video playing on this. And in this section, sure, there will be a race to the bottom because it's just a display unit with infinite supply. With in-stream inventory, we see exactly the opposite. We've seen an increase of about 35% in CPMs in the marketplace for those units, simply because you cannot reproduce, manufacture those units with unlimited supply.
So, I mean, given for the scarcity of premium video ad inventory, there is, it's logical to presume that if publishers think that exchanges or networks devalue their content in any way, they'll be more reluctant to participate. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
And is there any way around that? I mean, is there any way to convince publishers? Because the trend that I was writing about that Ross mentioned in the previous article was that publishers are withholding their premium inventory to sort of maintain a price floor. And if that's the way, I mean, if they all sort of, and not that they're colluding, but if they all decide to do the same thing, then it's hard to sort of open up the marketplace, is it not?
I think Hulu's the best example, and it's a living, breathing example that informs the whole marketplace. The major content holders and owners, the Foxes, the ABCs, the NBCs, have signed very short-term deals with Hulu. And what Hulu has done is maintain a premium price in the market for that content. But there's a constant tension between those two companies that that precludes the ability to go mass market with the product and extend that content to other publishers.
But they have to, because they're really only renting the content, right? I mean, they're renting it from the network. They have to maintain a certain pricing. I mean, Erik, I think there's such a big difference between an exchange and a network just to start off with. So kind of throwing those together, you kind of can't do, because as a publisher side, yes, we withhold inventory for the kinds of partnerships that we can do with brands that are broader. And then to the network goes the next level. I look at it as publisher, network, exchange. I don't know how. I mean, Greg, you would probably have the best perspective.
Well, from the agency side, the scarcity is an issue. If we're lucky enough to have a client that really wants to do a lot of video in a digital format, they recognize that there's a lot of fragmentation. We can't get the scale, and there's inevitable comparisons to television, right? And so they're always comparing the CPMs, and then that issues of brand safe environment is typically where we see more of that ranking is sort of in terms of what's the goal of the campaign. If the intent of the campaign is in some sort of branding or attitudinal shift, then you're going to start looking at those premium placements and look at the halo effect of the placement of the ad and the inventory, and then you try to follow that inventory, and you look at networks and you look at exchanges. Brand safe environment is a huge issue in this space, and that's where there are questions, probably harder questions, or it takes more time and effort for an exchange to answer those questions sometimes than a network too, right? So in terms of ranking, it does map that way in that respect.
And sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think we're confusing a few topics here. Let's start with the monetization from a publisher perspective. If you own a product, what you want to do is expose it to the maximum number of buyers, and you want to add value to the product. And this is exactly what you want to do with impressions. And what we do as a marketplace, we decommoditize this inventory. We're adding a lot of information, whether it is audience and content information, and capabilities like interactive pre-roll and dynamic creative and so on, to make every single product, every single impression more valuable. And then we take the more valuable product and put it in front of other hundreds of buyers, letting them compete in real time for this. That is increasing the revenue from publishers. So I think the key to remember from a publisher's perspective is that you need to have this mechanism. You need a platform that will enable you to do exactly that, add information on every impression and open it to the maximum number of buyers, and then you see the revenue increase. Obviously, publishers will always do a better job selling their own property. Publishers with enough scale need to have their own sales team that can position the unique aspects of the publishers. It cannot come from an automated self-service or RTB interfaces. So it's a combination of direct sales effort and a mechanism to take all the others and let all the players, all the buyers compete for this.
We mentioned brand safety, and that's, I think, an interesting thing, especially if you're dealing with exchanges or networks. What kind of controls and precautionary guarantees, tools for managing where content is? What should advertisers be looking for there?
For the agency side, we try to make sure that there's, transparency is one of the first things. If you've got a client that's really interested in making sure that their brand is protected, they need to know exactly where the exposures are happening, and so that's probably one of the first things. We counsel our clients to make sure that they understand what they're buying. So the distinction between, is it an in-banner or an in-stream, becomes really important, right? And then if we're in-stream, what's the user control? Can they skip ads? Can they not skip ads? So you try to map the user experience. The other element that's sort of more about user experience than brand safe is it a 30-second ad that's going to precede a 20-second bit of content? So how do you, so there's a lot of things that go into that sort of, counseling clients on what makes a good video buy. Getting those definitions, level setting across that is really important up front. And then it's really about transparency and control. Do we have protections in the language in the I/O that says, there's technology that allows us to screen out these things, to focus on these areas. Subject matter is crucially important for some clients. Political speech can be a wonderful thing in America, but it can be a really scary thing for brand advertisers, and so maybe it's not so much...
Unless it's the news, then they don't care about running in it. You know what I mean? They'll run on news websites that talk about everything and anything, but put it on a separate website and they want to be away from it. I don't get it, but whatever, it's another panel.
If they run on news sites, chances are someone is hovering over a panic button because they're waiting for a story to come up that they don't like. So yes, they'll run on the news stories, but that's not an unqualified, sure, let it run. They're watching. And so you have to, there's lots of triggers that we got to be able to pull fast when you're dealing with that kind of inventory.
As a DSP that works with a lot of exchanges and working on a completely transparent basis, I think that helps kind of expose exactly where you're running. And exchange is an exchange, but it's really, I think, our knowledge of the inventory that's coming through the exchanges plays a key part. We play a big role in tiering this inventory, categorizing this inventory, understanding what type of inventory is coming from these partners, understanding the performance rates, completion rates, and working with other technology partners like Affine, Proximic, Trusty, that helps provide a little bit more brand safety and security. I think we help provide that accountability and that transparency to the advertiser to know where they're buying and what they're getting.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree that transparency is key, and advertisers need to understand exactly what they buy. What is the placement, the location, user-generated, professional, auto-played, user-initiated, and so on. So yes, transparency is important, but they also need to pay attention to the delivery mechanism. Delivering a campaign with ad tags is like signing a blank check, and using a verification company is hiring a police to trace this blank check. That's pretty much how most campaigns run today. The integration with the publishers and the way of delivery is key. So more than 90% of the inventory in our marketplace coming directly from publishers that use our platform, and there is no ad tag flowing between the companies. We inject the ad directly to the player that reports back home exactly its location and URL and the kind of content that is following this. So it's important. People tend to forget the details of what happens from the buy to the delivery.
Who people forget
buyers,
the details.
Sometimes don't pay enough attention to what happens from buy to delivery, and those details are very important.
Is that true, Greg? How could that be? I mean, not that I'm moderating.
Stir it up.
Not Greg.
By all
I'm
means.
talking about other buyers. Obviously.
Other buyers, right, yeah, not my buyers.
are you you mentioned the need for controls. Do you find that those are broadly in place, or is that like a competitive distinction between different networks and exchanges, the degree of control they offer?
It's one of the reasons that going to the publishers or those premium outlets is one of the first stops, is because it's a more direct relationship, right? So I think we're painfully aware that there's a lot of handoffs. When you deal with networks and you deal with exchanges, you need to understand that all of those links, and that's where we have a lot of lawyers getting involved with writing protections into the insertion orders. Do we have to have a police force to monitor that, and that's where a lot of the relationships start to come in, right? If you're a buyer and you find out that you've gotten burned because there are handoffs that violated the terms that you tried to set up in terms of transparency or brand protection, you're not going to go back to that source again. You're not going to trust them, and so there's definitely a relationship that we depend on with regards to the sell side, right? So the networks and the premium outlets and the exchanges, all of them, regardless of what technology they use, there has to be some accountability for the business relationship that we're entering into. And so there's that element that helps sort of police or correct things. If you keep violating that trust, you're not going to get the business again.
I've said this before about other parts of online advertising, but I think it's equally true here. A lot of it is kind of like the Wild West a little bit. It seems like, just presuming implicit in what you said is the idea that there are bad actors out there, networks or exchanges that are not fully honest. Is that fair to say? Is there a substantial presence, or are most people trying to do the right thing in terms of transparency, building relationships, being reliable?
It's unfortunate. It's what I think hindered a lot of the success that we ought to be having. When I think about the TV industry, a lot of that business was written on napkins and made on handshakes, and you know who you were dealing with, and if you trusted that person, and you did the deal. And that's really what's allowed that business to scale to what today is a $70 billion business. I think we've gotten in our own way. I think a lot of what we're talking about here, the fact that Greg has to enlist lawyers to write an IO to put forth an online video campaign is a big problem. We're $2 billion. We've got a long runway to go to really scale the industry, and we're not going to scale if we're throwing an army of lawyers at each IO. So that's something I think we as an industry have to recognize and try to alleviate some of that those problems.
If you look at the network space right now, before we get to the exchanges, in the network space, what is there, 70 video ad networks out there? I mean, there are so many, and 1 or 2 deals per year can keep them in business. So they will do whatever it takes to get that deal, and that's where it starts to get shady. And in the TV world, what buyers used to buy as cable proliferated, they would buy 30 networks, 50 networks. And then they looked and they said, you know what, I just don't have the resources to be able to manage that amount of transactions for my team. So then they started buying only 20 and then top 15. And now they're really buying premium. That's what's going to happen in the network space and probably the exchange space after that. People are going to say, I just can't buy 20 video ad networks anymore. I'm only going to buy 15, 10, 5. We're starting to see that already. So the cream of the crop, Matt's company, Break, we're going to be, you got to be up in at least the top 10 or there's going to be a fallout. There's going to be a shakeout.
Someone out here has got to buy Break Media, for crying out loud. Let's go.
They do.
That was a shameless plug. I did not engineer that. So speaking of things that the industry needs to do, there's been a lot of talk about also measurement across, measurement of video online advertising and its comparability with TV or lack of comparability, as the case may be. And we heard earlier today about GRPs and it was an iGRP or an eGRP, some kind of new GRP for online. Is the industry moving towards a single standard like that? Or is it just going to probably remain fragmented or get more fragmented? What's your take on that?
Are you asking someone in particular?
Nope, everyone. I'm asking all of you.
I'm going to reserve mine. I'd like to hear what you guys have to. Okay.
Ooh, a good one. I stumped them.
I'll say something. I'll be that guy. we can't even get our shit together on like the ComScore, Quantcast, Nielsen. I mean, we can't even agree on that. We're going to agree on what the methodology of a GRP is in the digital space. I mean, clients look at us like deer in headlights, like, you know, and we're throwing out acronyms and the whole, they don't even know. It's no wonder they just say, just put in TV. You know, we are our own worst enemy because we can't even agree on the basic foundation of measurement yet. Forget about getting into the video space and understanding what an eGRP is, right? That's what I've seen. Agencies come to me, they say, you tell us what you want the measurement to be. Well, if we tell you, then the next agency comes to us, it's something different, then that's different. Then this person moves and leaves to this agency and they worked with that platform. It's like, it's tough right now.
I see two sides of the coin for myself. You know, I see I would love to have one baseline measurement that everybody can use. When you talk about TV business and $70 billion, where 1% of that business equals over 10% of our pie, I would love to be able to have these guys eat around our table all the time. However, at the same time, as we talked about earlier, we talked about ability level measure engagement, something that's very powerful and you can do online. In addition, frequency in a TV environment is very different than an online environment. And you know, for these type of measures, I think you need to have additional kind of metrics beyond GRP if you really want to understand and value and measure the benefits of online.
Yeah, I think there is no, you know, GRP is a good movement. In general, data can be the bridge between TV and online video, but it's more than that. It's extremely complicated right now to buy a TV campaign. Just put yourself in the shoes of a media buyer that
It's
needs
not hard to buy TV. It's really not.
Exactly, not TV,
Right.
but online
right.
video. If you
Yeah,
want to reach a
online video,
specific audio with dynamic creative, and you want to make the measurement work across all of those, you cannot work with 7 different vendors and open a project of 3 months in order to complete your task. You need one simple way of doing that, where those vendors are well integrated and with an interface that is intuitive and provides you both the scale and the simplicity. And obviously, yes, an agreed upon metrics is a part of it.
That's one vendor to rule them all. I'm interested to hear what Greg thinks. I promise not to put specific people on the spot, but you know, as the agency guy, we got to ask you, what do you like? What do you want? What do you need?
As the agency guy, well, as the media guy, as the agency guy, most of my answers start with "it depends," right? So, an iGRP or eGRP or whatever it seems like an oversimplification for most, especially digital advertisers. It seems like a leveling, in a sense, you could argue a dumbing down of the value of a digitally delivered video asset so that it's on par with broadcast and it makes it easier, simpler for folks coming from that perspective to move into a digital space and say it's all the same. But it really isn't all the same. There is so many layers of complexity. Valuing that exposure, valuing what happens after that exposure. Are you going for an attitudinal shift in your target audience, or is there a behavior that you want to elicit, or is there actually a valid behavioral proxy that you say it's a brand campaign, but you want to measure what they do, and so you decide this is a, so that, you know, some of the challenges that we face in terms of all digital campaigns, but video in particular, is how do we create the right valuation for those assets? And there is a lot of fragmentation, not only in terms of the space in which we can place those assets, but also what are the KPIs that we use to measure the value of that. And so I look at it as it feels like a conversation we had a decade ago when convergence was, you know, all the rage. And
I still love that word.
Yeah.
Use it all the time.
It's and so it feels like an oversimplification to me, and it isn't something that, if it's right for the situation, and we've got a perspective that's coming from a very broadcast-centric mentality, and you need to translate what happens in this space and use analogies and comparisons to other things that are more familiar, then there's some use for it. But as a basis of transaction, I think it's probably, there's too many other things that also have to connect to that. It in and of itself isn't enough to actually move the marketplace.
Brian, in a related area, the digital out-of-home advertising, they came up with an interesting solution. It's like a similar sort of conundrum. They were, they're a new and emerging medium. They wanted to be comparable with TV and yet also sort of grasp the things that made them new and different. And they came up with this, a rating system that is sort of, to hear them describe it, to hear the DPAA describe it, sets a floor. It kind of is broadly comparable, and then you can add your own little metrics on top of it, which just sounds like it might be an entree to more fragmentation, again. But it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting question how to proceed. Let's see. The one question, online advertising needs to. One of the big subjects, one of the big goals is storytelling. I've heard that repeatedly. Is there any way that exchanges and networks, with all their automation, can actually help improve the qualitative, the delivery, how advertising is delivered to consumers online?
I mean, when I was operating BBE, one of the first things we did is we started launching original content. This is back in 2004, 2005, and it was a fascination to a lot of marketers. We sold quite a bit of it, but we were ahead of our time. Quite frankly, I think what the networks have done over the past 5 or 6 years in advancing the systems and the infrastructure to push a lot of this content was the necessary first step. We had to have an efficient means of distributing, measuring this content before you could really start to push forth a lot of new original content. I think the time is now where companies like ours have to start informing the creative, the content side of the space. I see a vacuum, quite frankly. We've been covering up some of it with the content from the big media companies, and there's a lot of digital rights management issues that we're running into. But now is a great opportunity for networks like ours to start pushing forth a new generation of content. And I think the advertisers, I hope, Greg, you'd agree with me, would be very receptive to that next move.
Yeah, success in achieving your marketing goals is a lot about experimentation. The good news about the automation of media buying is that you can do a lot more experimentation a lot faster. So you can try multiple creatives. You can try multiple audience segments and very quickly get information about what's working, what not. So you don't just release it as a missile, but it's something that you continue to navigate and drive to the right success.
Not only in the content space, but also in the creative space from the advertiser perspective. The meetings that we're having now are not just with the media teams, but with the creative agencies and the agencies that are starting just strictly to build content for clients and learn how to distribute it and engage with audiences. So that's what's going to be really interesting and what is already happening, the creative conversations with media and publisher in the same room.
Yeah, I look at storytelling. I think of where media and creative come together, and it's typically a very challenging place to get it right. But with our DSP and exchanges, now you have a technology layer, as Amir said, where you can go out and reach out a large audience in real time, at scale, and adjust this media mix, understand what's going on. So I think DSPs can definitely, and exchanges can definitely play a big part in the storytelling aspect.
The technology is important because the promise of what digital can do in terms of its ability to segment and really start to pinpoint delivery. There's a lot of pressure around trying to leverage that, but at the same time, then how many creative assets do you need in order to pay that off? How do you build stories and then drive so much fragmentation that it's impossible for you to really maintain a view over it? So the technology has to create this very elegant solution that helps us deal with that amount of fragmentation and then roll it back up into something that's manageable for the human brain to have in a conversation with a client, right? So you have to pull it back to something. So we need to, the technology is really important for managing that, and I think the benefit that it brings is to be able to construct stories that you can tell, and you've got so much more finite control over, have I recognized this browser before? Is there another chapter to the story that I want to bring to them? So reach and frequency controls are a huge advantage for the digital space. I think the issue of content and how do you start to leverage original content or new content or build that out is really one that's more of what's the lens you're approaching the space from. If you're coming from a traditional TV lens, your first entree into digital video is going to be to follow those audiences and follow that programming forward, and that's where we started, which was that sort of premium content and therefore premium ad inventory, right? And that's a starting point for a lot of large traditional advertisers that are moving into this space. They're following the audiences and they're following the fragmentation. Once you get in and you start looking at the space through a digital lens, then worlds start to open up, because now you've got so many more outlets, so many more channels, the networks and the exchanges start to make sense, and you actually can say, well, the scarcity issue, we're sort of augmenting that with new content and building out more custom content that can only happen with the economics that digital platforms can provide. So that's how I see sort of the evolution of this stuff. It's really important, but it's gonna be an evolution. It's gonna take time for advertisers to think about digital video in its own terms rather than in TV terms, or in digital terms, which are more flash creative, DR-centric goals, right? And so we're sort of trapped in the middle of those pressures, the way I see it.
Are you finding that big brands are comfortable with placing ads through video ads, specifically through exchanges and networks?
Not all of them, no. Comfortable. There's varying appetites for risk across. We've got some clients that are in financial services, very conservative attitudes towards that, and that's not a place where they're generally very comfortable unless you go. Like I said, you'd have to go through a lot of explanation and take great pains to reassure them around transparency and protections and all that stuff. You've got other advertisers that are much more, particularly if there's a launch or there's some newsworthy value to their proposition that has a limited shelf time, lifespan, and they need to get the word out fast. Their appetite for risk may be a little bit greater, and they're actually much more approachable when it comes to things like networks and exchanges, and we go to them with a story of frequency capping and control, pushing reach, and that's what they need for this, and so it varies across the spectrum of clients and industries.
Which makes sense. We talked about new technologies, and this I haven't found a place quite to slot this question in, but I was talking to Young Jin, and he mentioned private exchanges. I was just wondering, this is something new to me. I don't actually know anything about this. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's just the idea that you create a marketplace that has a limited set of sellers or buyers with additional controls in place. And those controls could be around pricing floors, inventory caps, various measures that OpenRTB and real-time bidding provides you. I think are premium publishers ready to jump into private exchanges? Not necessarily. It depends on what they want to do with it. It depends on what the buyer demand side opportunities lie. At the same time, I think we talked about pricing, and I think a lot of the concerns around strategic perishability of inventory comes down to the pricing that they can achieve. And when you look at CPMs in the exchange markets, where they're very surprised when I talk to these premium publishers about the pricing that they can acquire through this exchange and through real-time bidding, it's not like the display space. And so the idea is that if you can provide additional controls in place for them to be able to work with the partners that they want to, through real-time bidding, through exchanges, we have an avenue to open up premium publishers to make them much more comfortable about bringing their inventory on board, being able to work with the folks that they want to, and opening up this incremental budget from places like trading houses that have great advertisers that really want to leverage programmatic buying.
Yeah, this is where private exchanges start. It's actually a lot more. It's going many steps beyond that. We power the private exchanges of some of the largest video ad networks and internet companies, and what they do is they put all of their supply and all of their demand on one platform. They connect their data sources, and they also connect to the back office systems. So they have one place where they can manage the demand and supplies and maximize it based on their business rules. So you can have multiple demand sources compete. They can be RTB, they can be self-service, they can be campaigns to sell in-house, but having it all in one place that enable all of those different business situations with the data and integration with back office system simplifies the work that they have to do. And yes, they can always tap into the public market for additional demand and additional supply.
So does that usually start with on the buy side, you know, the impetus for building that private network is that there's a demand for this, and so we'll go out and find the inventory supply to match that, or does it go the opposite way?
For us, it's mostly companies that buy and sell. And obviously, you're always short on one side. Sometimes you're short at both sides at the same time. And what this solution solves is really the complexity of managing all of your supply sources, demand sources. So, you know, some of the large internet companies have their own and operated player. They have syndicated players. They have partnerships. And on the other side, they want to give agencies a self-service interface. They want to make sure that their sales team have a place to run their campaigns. They want to tap into RTB sources. You take all of that together and you run it in one place where you can always increase the inventory level with the public marketplace or tap into additional demand from a public marketplace, and you have a well-optimized solution that is easy to operate.
You know, for us at TwoMogul, we're getting to the point with our demand-side partners where I think it's come to the point where they are not seeing the inventory that they want to see, and they're using us as a technology source, as a conduit to put these technologies together so they can execute programmatically. And I think that's maybe one of the ways that we'll see private exchange come into fruition here with the premium publishers.
And I guess my last question, because we have to break soon for questions from the audience. This is not something we wrote down, but when we were talking earlier, and I heard this a couple times, that this is an industry that is getting in its own way. What do you do about that? What is the solution? I mean, how do you make it easier for basically people to buy online video advertising in this format?
I think we have to simplify the proposition. I think we have to make it really easy for, you know, eager buyers, and this is a very fast-growing marketplace, 40% a year. There's a lot of appetite out there, and what I believe the task before us is to really simplify the proposition, make it easy for these buyers to buy in, so that as they're experiencing their success, they're accelerating the spend. And I see us trying to get too cute. I see us trying to make things really complicated. You know, one of the things we just talked about is, you know, with regards to storytelling, it's not necessarily in our DNA. We're technologists. As an industry, we've grown up as technology and technology first. I think we have to start to simplify the complicated technology and make it a really easy a proposition for very hungry buyers that really want to help us accelerate the space. That's where I think we need to go.
I think from the agency side, we need to do something similar, which is in dealing with our clients, we need to make sure that we can align what their goals are with the measures. We can you know, that's a big step for us, and making sure that the scale exists to meet, you know, what we're selling them, and so that simplification, that, you know, making it easy would help. And, you know, from the agency side, if we can set this apart and have it evaluated on what it's really good at delivering and make it elegant and simple, then that's something that will help build confidence. The advertisers will continue to flow dollars in this direction. They recognize that there's a disparity, that the audiences are moving into the space faster than their dollars are, but it's still very complicated and somewhat confusing, and there's still not necessarily a really clear, simple demonstration of value that's compelling them to say, I'm going to go away from what's familiar to me and move into this space. You know, and online media has always been held to a different standard of accountability, and so if we can match that standard and make it real simple, I think it'll help ease that shift.
I'll just add that, you know, I come from e-commerce. I mean, to me, there is no reason in the world that media is going to be more complicated to buy or to sell than it is to do with a DVD player or a digital camera. And we're not going to do it by dumbing it down. We're going to do it by giving you all the tools and information and the mechanism for fair pricing, so you know exactly what you buy, you manage what you buy, and you know you're paying a fair price for that. It's totally achievable. and I think we're making fast progress toward actually realizing this dream.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll see tens of billions of dollars flowing into the space in the next year. So on that note, I will turn it over to questions from the audience.
Anybody? Oh.
We have a first over here.
Hi, I'm Greg Fisher from Swirl. My question to you guys is, what percent of the 1% that you can put ads in front of, what percent goes unsold right now? Do you have any estimate of what percent of the video content is not sold?
I think there are various numbers out there. I think the gentleman from ComScore right before said less than 1% of YouTube is pre-roll. There's pre-roll. Less than 1% on YouTube's videos have pre-roll against them. We actually limit the amount of pre-roll that we serve on break because we're sensitive to the user experience, so we can turn on the faucet and turn it off. I think, I think it's all over the place, really. I think the television networks are going to start putting full load onto their digital play, just like CW did, because they want to interchange those impressions from TV. If they underdeliver on TV, they want to deliver online and make up for that underdelivery because it's more efficient there. So you're going to start to see that first. All the television networks are going to put full load in. Everybody, all the full episode players are going to add as many units as they can. That was the panel before us. I actually didn't hear what they said, but I'm sure they said that, because if they didn't, they're wrong. But that's really what you're going to see. You're just going to see more, because dollars are moving more quickly into the video space. You're going to have to put them somewhere. So consumers are used to it anyway. They're used to seeing a pre-roll at this point already. Just give it to them. You know, not every video, but they will see more and more. It's just going to become the norm.
I think my question is more with the difference between exchanges and networks. With the difference between exchanges and networks, is there are the networks not able to sell to the capacity? Like that's more of my question. Is not is there going to be more load, but in any given week or day of available video content, is there true scarcity? Is the quality selling out?
The $2 billion of ad spend today in online video, if you were to put a normalized CPM against the amount of inventory that's out there, 30 billion streams per month that ComScore talks about, we should be able to support a business that's in the tens of billions of dollars. So we're at a very low sellout because the content, there's a lot of factors, but the quality of the content is central to that.
Anyone else? Anyone else?
Jason Schulman, Adapt TV. Yes, admittedly jaded in asking this question, but I'm going to ask one to the two pubs, Andrew and Matt. Is the day coming where you're going to take your best, most premium inventory and RTB enable it?
From a publisher perspective, there should be a model in there for real-time bidding. I use the phrase, we can't get too cute because, if there's not enough there, then, to put a system against limited inventory and, put it through a system like that might not make sense. But, the industry's grown really fast. I just quoted the ComScore number. I keep a close eye on just how much inventory is out there. And we ought to be making more efficient use out of all that inventory. And some of the major pubs, MySpace absolutely has a ton of inventory that may not represent the highest premium content today. There should be a means to push efficient ad serving through that system. So the answer is yes, but it's a case by case, and where it makes sense, absolutely.
I was just going to say, if you look at television today, and literally I mean today, right now the marketplace is soft. If you look at ESPN and primetime programming, you're going to see 1-800, the computer guy that's selling that kind of thing. In a strong marketplace, that spot would never get to air. And the same thing would happen on in digital space with if we have inventory and someone came to us and they said, you know what, we have some inventory that we want to place there just to see what happens, we might get there. In a strong marketplace, probably not, just because the demand will be so high. But the demand will dictate when we do it. I agree with Matt. It's possible.
Well, that's why I say premium, though, versus the
Yep.
But the premium content holders aren't necessarily interested in the most efficient means of selling their inventory. They're enjoying a bubble. They're enjoying the inefficiency they do on TV, and they actually see the same online. But we're gonna as an industry we're gonna evolve.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Thank you, panel. We're out of
Thank you.
time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.